I want to take a few minutes to tell you about me because I think there are various factors that have contributed to my responsiveness to the works of Ernest Becker and ultimately my being here. I come from an all-Arabic family of first-generation immigrants. I was the only one in my family, along with my brother and sister, who were born here in America. But everybody, my parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, everybody, all my cousins were born overseas. And my mother's side of the family comes from Lebanon, and they came here to escape the hardships of civil war. And Lebanon, in case you don't know, is about 50% Christian, 50% Muslim, disregarding the various sects of each one. My father's side of the family comes from a small town in Syria called Ammar, from which I get my last name, Ammary. And my grandfather's an olive farmer. They were pretty poor, but they came here simply for more opportunity. Anyway, both of my parents knew very well the dangers of religious intolerance. And I was very thankful that at a young age, they taught me and my siblings that we should learn as much as we could about all the different religions before we decided to, sort of pick for ourselves. And so I grew up with a kind of an insatiable curiosity about religious matters. And I think the first class that I registered for when I got to college was a philosophy of religion class. And then throughout college, I studied as much philosophy and literature and politics and psychology as I possibly could. And it was in my senior year of college at the University of Delaware, I took a class called Death and Dying, which is a 300-level philosophy elective with a guy named Alan Fox, who was a great professor. And he required us to read The Denial of Death, and among other works. But I had been studying, like I said, so many different subjects. I was a double major in English and philosophy, and a minor in political science. And like I said, I took as many psychology classes and would read all this stuff all the time, really interested in biology. And I was just blown away by The Denial of Death. I mean, this was my senior year, the last semester, and this was something that I had been really craving, something interdisciplinary that would tie everything I had been reading about together. It was just so frank and so fearless and, most importantly, so relevant. Probably the biggest factor that's kept me at the high school level has been my opportunity to teach Becker's work to my students. It's just been absolutely career-defining for me, and it's created so many great personal relationships with my students that it's just so hard to walk away from. I actually thought about going to graduate school at the end of last year, and I had about 50 students show up at my house and say, look, you can't go. We want to learn about denial of death next year, and everybody keeps talking about it. I operate under the assumption that everybody really is curious about this stuff. Whether they are vo-tech students and they want to be electricians or construction workers or physicists, whatever. I think everybody lays their head down on their pillow every once in a while and wonders, who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of all this? And so I think if you package all this stuff the right way, you can really tap into their curiosities. And I mean, it really is remarkable what comes out of these kids once you start just getting them to open up a little bit. So what I did was I taught 9th and 10th grade English my first 2 years to some lower level students, and my third year of teaching I was offered a choice. Hey, do you want to teach the 11th grade honors classes and the 12th grade college preparatory classes? And I thought, yeah, great, I would love to. And I wanted to really challenge the kids, so I wanted to bring Becker's work into my teaching, and I went to my department chair and I said to him, hey, there's this book called The Denial of Death by this guy named Ernest Becker, and I don't know if you've heard of it, but I'd really like to teach it. And he said, sure, what's the ISBN number? He was in the middle of something. I knew that it was going to be met with some resistance from some students and most importantly their parents. And every semester I have to defend the book by some parents who call in and say that little Susie or Johnny is coming home and questioning religion too much and starting to think too critically about the way we raise him or her. And I always sort of defend the book by saying that, look, what Becker says really isn't all that different from what Thoreau or Emerson or any of the great American writers are saying. They want us to rethink our relationships with our culture and with the great unknown. And when they talk about religion, I say, well, this is what American literature is. I mean, it's about religion. It's unavoidable. I just don't believe you can be very good at understanding literature if you don't understand philosophy and psychology and theology and all this stuff. I think you can be good, but I just don't think you can really get it. So And the other thing I do is I always try to package it with the whole, it's all an effort to reduce violence. And once they hear that, I think their worry subsides a little bit. So how do we build healthy egos or help foster causa sui projects in kids? For starters, I think we have to be very honest about the world we present to them. We can't paint it a certain way. We can't lie about it. We can't tell them that the world is some big friendly place and it's just waiting for them to conquer it, and they're so special and unique. And we can't tell them that, necessarily you can do anything you want as long as you put your mind to it. Because they figure out pretty quickly that they can't. When I was young, I wanted to fly, and I tried and tried, I just couldn't do it. So I believe that perhaps a lot of violence can be eliminated if we just get people to have a healthier perspective on their existence, and why they feel a need to defend the things that they believe in, and why they feel the need to be aggressive towards others. I just think that getting people to re-examine their value systems is the challenge. And that's what teaching the denial of death at the high school level has been all about for me. But I'm happy to say that over the years, I've seen some really incredible growth in my students. The maturity is something I do brag about all the time, because the kids I teach are brilliant. They really are. I mean, these kids are superstars. I taught a kid who just last year was named the Wendy's High School Heisman, and he was rated the #1 overall male student athlete in the country. He's now at Princeton. And kids who are going to Berkeley and to Harvard and all over the place. And I'm happy to say that these are kids who read the denial of death in high school. I had one student who was applying to Dartmouth, and she went in for an interview. And at the interview, one of the questions was, so what course has affected you most in high school? And she brought up my English course and talked about the denial of death. And as soon as she mentioned it, I don't know who was interviewing her, by the way, but as soon as she mentioned the denial of death, she read the denial of death, the interviewer was exceptionally impressed and said, that's it, you're in. And so they spent the next half hour just talking about Becker, which I thought was kind of cool. So I've seen some really incredible things. When my kids want to know the payoff, I package it at the end by saying, look, you're empowered now. You can sort of permeate society. You can pick your own path. You don't need to feel overwhelmed. You don't need to feel like you're a victim. You don't need to feel helpless. You don't need to wake up at 40 years old with some identity crisis or some midlife crisis and say, look, I've done everything my culture told me to do, like Kevin Spacey in American Beauty. Now what? I don't feel good. So they're starting to make better choices. And I think that's really great.